I got a chance to play with the Utah Jazz, Detroit Pistons, and Dallas Mavericks. I got a chance to play for losing NBA teams. What a great experience. I got a chance to play for one of the winningest teams in the history of the NBA. I played for the Utah Jazz and Jerry Sloan, 4th all-time winningest coach in the history of the NBA. But for 1 week, I spent with the Chicago Bulls. My agent was working out my contract. And he says, Walter, you're from Chicago. Why don't you work out with the Bulls until I decide where we go between Chicago and Utah? I went to Chicago's training facility. They had just won an NBA title. And let me tell you something, it was different. They handed out the issued equipment. It was different. As soon as practice began, it was different. Phil Jackson comes out the locker room. And I'm like, shoot, there goes Phil Jackson. Oh, man. And the first time he opened up his mouth, he said this, hey guys, when Mike shows up, everybody plays defense. When Mike shows up, nobody leaves early. When Mike shows up, everyone stays late and lifts weights. When Mike shows up, 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 when Mike shows up. I went back to my hotel and I could hear that in my head. When Mike shows up, when Mike shows up, when Mike shows up, we were getting conditioned. We were getting onboarded into the culture of the Chicago Bulls. And I can tell you for a fact, after spending 1 week in Chicago, it was clear to me there's a difference between winners, losers, and champions. Michael Jordan knew we're going to win. Why? Because I'm on the team. Michael Jordan knew we're going to win. Why? Because I'm on the team. Tom Brady has the same mentality. You know what? We're going to win a Super Bowl. Why? Because I'm on the team. You should have that same mentality. You know what? We're going to hit our goals. Why? Because I'm on the team. What's the difference between a winner and a champion? Because champions collaborate. Champions train. Champions work hard. What's the subtle difference between a winner? Desire. Okay. What else? Attitude. What else? Winning teams believe. I'm trying to figure out what is that special sauce, right? What's that extra special sauce, head coach, that your team needs to be a champion? What is it? Grit. Love it. You got to be tough. Winning teams are tough. Passion. Winning teams are passionate. I'm trying to discover what's that extra little special sauce that separates winners from champions. There's 3 kinds of teams, don't you guys agree? Winners, losers, and champions. We all talk about winners and losers, but we rarely talk about champions. I came today to empower you to be ready to build a championship team. But we need to be intentional. And we gotta know what separates a winner from a champion. Because if you don't know, it's impossible to build it. Don't you guys agree? If you don't know, it's impossible to create it. Most people are happy being winners, but very few are committed to being a champ. The one thing I learned for that week in Chicago, Chicago was committed to being a champion. And the way we got indoctrinated, when Mike shows up, it's time to get to work. Can I ask you a question? What happens when you show up? When you show up, does your efforts elevate? When you show up, are people inspired and motivated? When you show up, do you make your teammates better? When you show up, do you remind them of the core values because you live the core values and you have a living example of what the core values are all about? Can I ask you a question? If you're going to be an impact player, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more in a moment, you have to understand that when you show up, you're the difference. When you show up, everything's elevated. When you show up, the goal is simple. We don't stop until we're number one. When I left sports and got into the business world, the buzzword is culture. Our culture, our culture, our culture. All culture is your locker room. Do you have a championship locker room? Do you have a winning locker room? Do you have a losing locker room? Let me give you a little bit of some advice. If you guys have some of that passive-aggressive communication, there's a good chance you have a losing locker room and you don't even realize that you have a losing locker room. Champion locker rooms are different. You guys agree? Raise your hand. Winning locker rooms are okay. Winning locker rooms are fine. Winning locker rooms help you keep your job. Winning locker rooms help you stay employed. Winning locker rooms are fine, and most people are happy with just being a winner, but don't understand the subtle difference between a winner and a champ. Here's a simple formula I want you guys to understand. Championship teams have impact players that work together in harmony. Say it one more time. A championship team have a bunch of impact players that work together in harmony. I got to play for a winner, but to this day, I never forgot that week in Chicago. Just 1 week in that atmosphere, just 1 week in that culture, just 1 week in that locker room has set my mind on a whole different track. We got a bunch of impact players working together in harmony, all focused on a common goal. So I'm gonna ask you a real question. Think about your career. As a business leader, do you walk around with the machete? Or do you walk around with the whistle? If you learn how to coach, your company will be 21% more productive. Stop trying to find good help and put on your coaching hat and develop good help. So the moment someone gets onboarded, your company has to have a different mentality. They say, hey man, welcome home. And you can reach your potential here. You do not have to leave. My wife and I are writing our next book. It's called Cultivate, the 6 non-negotiables of a winning team. Biz hat. It's your job to cultivate your culture. It's your job to cultivate execution. It's your job to cultivate a winning environment. It's your job to cultivate a championship team. So business leaders, you want to make more money? Easy. You got to learn how to coach. You have to learn how to build culture. You must become an expert with people. Some business leaders think effective leadership is being a butthole. In fact, you might have had a mentor that taught you that. In sports, great coaches produce other great coaches. You guys know that? Great coaches produce other great coaches. Great coaches cultivate other great coaches. So in business, don't great leaders cultivate other great leaders? And so if you cultivate the right culture, even when you retire, even when you leave, your organization will not fall apart. So can I ask you a question? If you left today, would your organization fall apart? Not if you cultivated the right culture. Not if you developed other leaders. In fact, most great coaches, they can handpick their successor. They literally handpick their successors. I've built a great culture, I've developed great leaders, and I got a couple of tough choices. But Cindy's the one. Doug is the one. Bill is the one. He's who's going to be my successor. I've imparted everything I know into him. I've imparted everything I know into her. I've been coaching him for 20 years. I've been coaching him for 30 years. I've been coaching her, and she is ready. Can I ask you a question? Am I talking to you?